The twin suns of Zerath blazed mercilessly overhead, their combined heat turning the endless dunes into shimmering mirages. Nera pressed forward each step, sinking into the burning sand, her ancestral staff glowing faintly with psychic energy. 3 days had passed since she'd fled through the dimensional gate, leaving behind the smoking ruins of her homeworld. 3 days since the Kravak had exterminated her people. The Alari had been telepaths for millennia, their minds capable of reaching across the void itself. Nera's staff, carved from crystalline heartwood and passed down through generations of her lineage, hummed with the collective memories of her ancestors. Now, she was the last, the sole keeper of their traditions, their knowledge, their very existence. A distant rumble made her pause. Behind her, a wall of sand rose like a titan awakening, stretching from horizon to horizon. The storm was massive, larger than any she'd encountered in her travels across dozens of worlds. She'd survived sandstorms before, but this one would bury her alive. Nera looked around desperately. The landscape offered nothing but endless dunes and scattered rocks. Her telepathic abilities were nearly depleted from constant use over the past 3 days, scanning for threats, for any sign of civilization, for hope. The staff's glow was dimming as her strength failed. Then she saw it, a cave mouth barely visible between two towering rocks. More importantly, there was light inside. Not the harsh glare of plasma weapons or the cold blue of energy fields, but something warm, almost comforting. With no other choice, she ran toward it as the storm's roar grew deafening behind her. The cave entrance was barely wide enough for her to squeeze through. As she stumbled inside, the world outside erupted into chaos. The sandstorm arrived with the fury of a living thing, howling and clawing at the stone. But inside, the light grew stronger. Nera moved deeper into the cave, her staff held defensively before her. The passage widened, and she found herself in a chamber that defied explanation. The walls were smooth, almost metallic, and lined with what looked like control panels. Strange symbols glowed along the surfaces, and the air hummed with energy. "Stop right there!" The voice came from the shadows. A figure emerged, tall humanoid wearing some kind of environmental suit. The being's face was hidden behind a reflective visor, and one hand rested on what was clearly a weapon. Nera raised her staff, the crystal tip flaring with psychic fire. "I seek only shelter from the storm. I mean no harm." The figure hesitated, then slowly reached up and removed the helmet. Nera gasped. The face that looked back at her was unlike anything she'd encountered in her travels. Smooth features, no neural ridges or cranial modifications, eyes that were a startling blue. This was not Kravak, not Alari, not any of the dozen species she knew. Human, the being, said as if reading her confusion. "My name is Daniel, and you're not what I expected to find in a sandstorm. Human." Nera lowered her staff slightly. "But humans are extinct. Have been for 3,000 years. Daniel's laugh was bitter. "Apparently the reports of our extinction were greatly exaggerated. You're a Lari, aren't you? I can sense the psychic resonance from your staff." Nera nodded slowly. "I am Nera, daughter of the 9th Circle Keeper, of the Crystalline Path, and now seemingly the last of my kind. Join the club." Daniel gestured deeper into the chamber. "Come on. That storm will last hours. We might as well be civilized about this." As they moved through the installation, Nera marveled at the technology around her. The surfaces were seamless, the energy signatures unlike anything in her extensive knowledge of galactic civilizations. Everything was clean, functional, almost sterile in its perfection. "How many of you are there?" she asked. "Here, just me." Daniel's voice carried a weight of solitude that resonated with her own loss. "I'm the last guardian of Outpost Omega-7. Has been my job for the past 15 years. They entered a larger chamber filled with monitoring equipment. Screens showed orbital readings, atmospheric data, and something that made Nera's blood run cold. Energy signatures she recognized. Kravak. "They're coming," she whispered. Daniel followed her gaze to the screens. "The Kravac, yes, I know. They've been probing this system for months. My job is to make sure they don't find what's hidden here." "What is hidden here?" Daniel turned to face her fully. New Terra, the last human colony, hidden on the dark side of the system's third moon, completely shielded from detection. Home to nearly 1 million human survivors. Nera felt her legs weaken. 1 million! We've been hiding for 3 millennia, building, growing, preparing. The galaxy thinks we're extinct because that's what we wanted them to think. But you, he gestured to her staff. Your people were our allies once, weren't they? Before the great fragmentation. Memories flooded through Nera's mind carried on the psychic currents of her staff. Ancient alliances, shared knowledge, humans, and Alari working together to preserve peace in the galaxy. The Harmony Accords. Our people signed them 2,000 years before your supposed extinction. Not supposed, planned. We saw what was coming. The rise of the Kravac, the consolidation of aggressive species. So we disappeared. Made the galaxy think we were gone, while we rebuilt in secret. Alarms suddenly blared throughout the complex. Daniel rushed to the control panels, his hands flying over the interfaces. On the main screen, 3 objects were descending through the atmosphere, their hulls gleaming with the distinctive exoskeleton technology of the Kravac. "Reconnaissance units," Nera said, recognizing the configuration. "They're scouting for larger forces." "Then we're out of time." Daniel began initiating shutdown procedures. "This facility's job is done. Time to blow it and run." "Wait," Nera grabbed his arm. "The Kravac decimated my people because we posed a threat to their expansion. If they discover humans are still alive, they'll commit genocide again. That's why this place needs to be destroyed. No evidence, no trace of human technology." "But what about fighting back? What about justice for our peoples?" Daniel paused in his work. "With what, we're survivors, not conquerors. The Kravac have the entire galactic rim under their control." Nera held up her staff, the crystal, now blazing with renewed energy. "With this, my ancestors' memories, they speak of an ancient weapon, something our peoples created together during the Harmony era. They called it the Harmony Spear." "That's a myth." "No." The certainty in her voice made him look up. "The psychic imprints in my staff. They're showing me coordinates, a location in the Helix Nebula. If it exists, if we can find it." The facility shook as the Kravac scouts landed. Daniel's expression hardened. "First we survive this, then we talk about myths." He led her deeper into the installation to a chamber she hadn't seen before. At its center sat a sleek vessel, its hull bearing the same seamless design as the outpost. "The Pathfinder," Daniel explained, as he began powering up the ship. "Fast, stealthy, and completely undetectable by Kravac sensors. Our ticket out of here." "What about the self-destruct?" "Remote trigger once we're clear." He paused at the ship's entrance. "I need to ask you something, Nera. In there, you said you were the last of your people. Is that true?" She nodded, pain flickering across her features. "The Kravac came during our greatest celebration, when all the circles were gathered. They killed everyone in a single strike. Then you carry their memory, their knowledge." "Yes." "And I carry mine, the last guardian of human secrets." He met her eyes. "Maybe that means something." Before she could respond, the sound of cutting tools echoed through the installation. The Kravac had reached the inner chambers. Daniel sealed the ship's airlock and began the launch sequence. "Can this ship reach the coordinates your staff is showing you?" Nera consulted the psychic impressions flowing through the crystal. "Yes, but it's a journey of weeks. And the Kravac?" "Leave the Kravac to me. I've been preparing for this my whole life." The Pathfinder's engines hummed to life with barely a whisper. Through the ship's viewports, Nera saw the chamber walls retracting, revealing the cave was actually a concealed launch bay. As they rose into the storm-darkened sky, Daniel's hands moved over the controls with practiced precision. "There," he said, pointing to the main display. The scouts are concentrated around the installation's main entrance. They haven't found the bay yet. Once they cleared the atmosphere, Daniel activated the remote trigger. Below them, the desert briefly flowered with brilliant light as the outpost self-destructed, taking any trace of human technology with it. But they weren't free yet. Nera felt a familiar presence brush against her mind, the cold, predatory thoughts of Kravak scouts. "They're following us." "I was hoping they wouldn't notice our launch." Daniel's jaw tightened. "Hold on." The next few hours were a deadly game of cat and mouse through the asteroid fields of the outer system. The Pathfinder was faster than the Kravak scouts, but they were persistent. Daniel demonstrated piloting skills that bordered on the supernatural, weaving between rocky chunks of debris, while the enemy struggled to keep up. "How did you learn to fly like this?" Nera asked, gripping her staff as the ship pitched through another narrow passage. "Everyone on New Terra is trained from childhood. We never knew when we might need to run again." Finally, they reached the edge of the system. Daniel began calculations for the jump to hyperspace, while Nera concentrated on the coordinates flowing through her staff. The ancient memories were becoming clearer, showing her fragments of the past. She saw her ancestors working alongside humans, their technologies blending in ways that seemed to enhance both. The Harmony Spear wasn't just a weapon. It was a symbol of cooperation, a tool that could only function when both species worked together. "Daniel," she said quietly, "I think I understand now. The Harmony Spear. It's not just about stopping the Kravak. It's about proving that different species can unite, can create something greater together than either could alone." He looked at her, and she saw something in his eyes she hadn't noticed before. Not just determination, but hope. "Then we find it. Together." The jump to hyperspace was smooth, but as the stars elongated around them, Nera felt a deep weariness settle over her. For 3 days, she'd been running on adrenaline and desperation. Now, in the safety of the ship's medical bay, Daniel insisted she rest while he treated the cuts and burns she'd sustained in her flight across the desert. "You're exhausted," he said, applying a healing gel to a particularly nasty burn on her arm. "When's the last time you slept?" "I don't remember." She watched him work, noting the gentleness in his movements. "Daniel, why are you doing this? You could have destroyed the outpost and returned to New Terra. You'd have completed your mission." He was quiet for a long moment. "Because for 3,000 years my people have been hiding. We've survived, yes, but at what cost? We've become shadows of what we once were. Maybe it's time to step back into the light. The Kravak won't just let you reclaim your place in the galaxy." "No, which is why we need allies." He met her eyes. "Why we need the Harmony Spear." As the ship traveled through hyperspace, they spent hours discussing the ancient memories contained in Nera's staff. The psychic impressions revealed a weapon of incredible power, but one that required both human technology and Alari telepathic abilities to function. More than that, it had been designed as a symbol, proof that cooperation between species was not only possible, but could achieve miracles. "The coordinates are becoming clearer," Nera said on their 3rd day in hyperspace. "The Helix Nebula Sector 7 near a binary star system. But there are warnings too. The weapon is guarded." "By what?" "The memories are unclear. Something about tests, about proving worthiness." She looked at her staff, its crystal now glowing with steady light. "Our ancestors didn't want the Harmony Spear falling into the wrong hands." When they emerged from hyperspace, the beauty of the Helix Nebula took Nera's breath away. Streams of colored gas and stellar debris created a cosmic tapestry that seemed almost alive. At its heart, the binary stars Daniel had mentioned spun around each other in an eternal dance. "There," Daniel said, pointing to the ship's sensors. "An artificial object hidden in the debris field around the stars. It's huge." The structure that appeared on their screens defied easy description. Part space station, part temple, it seemed to have been grown rather than built. Crystalline spires twisted around metallic cores, and the whole thing pulsed with a gentle rhythmic light. "It's beautiful," Nera whispered. "And completely impossible according to everything I know about physics. The gravitational forces from those binary stars should have torn it apart millennia ago." As they approached, Nera felt her staff responding to something in the structure. The crystal began to sing a low harmonic that seemed to resonate through her bones. On the ship's communication array, strange signals began appearing. "It's scanning us," Daniel reported. "No, wait, it's scanning you, your staff specifically." The signals suddenly coalesced into something recognizable, a docking beacon guiding them to a specific port on the structure's lower levels. As the Pathfinder settled into the docking bay, artificial gravity kicked in, and the bay pressurized with breathable atmosphere. "Someone's expecting us," Daniel said, checking his environmental suit. "Or something our ancestors left behind is still functioning." They left the ship together, Nera's staff blazing with psychic energy, Daniel with a human energy weapon at his side. The docking bay opened onto a corridor that seemed to stretch for kilometers, its walls covered in symbols from both human and Alari cultures. "This place is old," Daniel said, studying the markings. "Older than New Terra, older than anything in our records." "The Harmony period," Nera replied, "when our peoples worked as one." They hadn't walked far when the first test began. The corridor ahead shimmered and suddenly split into multiple paths. Each path showed different destination, different challenges. "Together," Nera said firmly, taking Daniel's hand. The weapon was meant for cooperation, not individual achievement. The moment their hands touched the staff's crystal, exploded with light. The multiple paths wavered and merged into one, leading deeper into the structure. They walked hand in hand, and Nera found herself thinking about more than just the mission. Daniel's presence was comforting in ways she hadn't expected. The next test was more direct. Warriors made of light and energy materialized around them, moving with the distinctive combat patterns of various galactic species, including Kravak. But these were not enemies to be defeated with violence. "Look," Daniel pointed to his weapons readings. "They're not showing hostile intent. They're teaching." Nera reached out with her telepathic abilities, touching the minds of the light warriors. "They're showing us combat techniques. Different species working together instead of against each other." They spent what felt like hours in that chamber, learning to blend human technology with Alari telepathy in combat. Daniel's weapons became extensions of Nera's psychic abilities, while her staff channeled and amplified his targeting systems. When the lesson was complete, the warriors dissolved into sparks of light that flowed into the staff's crystal. "It's learning," Nera gasped. "The staff is absorbing the knowledge." The final chamber was vast, its ceiling lost in shadows. At its center, floating in a column of pure energy, was the Harmony Spear. It was beautiful beyond words, a perfect fusion of crystal and metal, of curved Alari aesthetics and clean human engineering. The weapon seemed to sing with harmonics that touched both technological and telepathic frequencies. But as they approached the chamber filled with images, historical records of the device's creation, they saw Daniel's ancestors and Nera's working together, not as separate peoples, but as one unified force. The weapon hadn't just been built. It had been grown, cultivated through the combined will and skill of both species. "How do we claim it?" Daniel asked. Nera approached the energy column, her staff raised. "Together, as it was meant to be." She placed one hand on the staff, and Daniel placed his hand over hers. Together, they reached out toward the Harmony Spear. The moment they made contact, the weapon's song became a roar that seemed to encompass the entire universe. Visions flooded through them. The weapon's true purpose, its incredible capabilities, and the responsibility that came with wielding it. The Harmony Spear was more than a tool of war. It was a symbol of what species could achieve when they worked together, instead of fighting each other. As the energy column dissipated, the Harmony Spear settled into their joined hands. It was warm to the touch, and seemed to pulse in rhythm with their heartbeats. Nera felt Daniel's thoughts through the weapon and knew he felt hers. "Now what?" he asked. Before she could answer, alarms echoed through the structure. On the chamber's walls, displays showed the space around the nebula. Kravac ships, dozens of them, were emerging from hyperspace. The fleet that had destroyed her homeworld had followed them. "How did they find us?" "Does it matter?" Daniel's expression was grim. "We need to get back to the ship." They ran through corridors that now seemed to be collapsing behind them, as if the ancient structure was preparing to defend itself. The Pathfinder was still in the docking bay, but as they approached, 3 Kravac soldiers materialized. Real ones this time, not constructs of light. "Telepathic scum," one of them snarled, raising a plasma rifle. "You led us right to the human nest." Daniel moved to draw his weapon, but Nera stopped him. "Let me try something." She raised the Harmony Spear, and it responded unlike anything she'd ever wielded. The weapon seemed to anticipate her thoughts, amplifying her telepathic abilities 1,000-fold. But more than that, it created a bridge between her mind and Daniel's, allowing him to channel his technological knowledge through her psychic powers. The result was devastating. The Kravac soldiers' exoskeletons simply shut down their weapons, dropped from nerveless fingers, and their predatory minds were filled with images of peace and cooperation. They staggered backward, confused and frightened by the sudden absence of their murderous nature. "Get to the ship," Nera said, and Daniel didn't argue. As the Pathfinder launched from the disintegrating structure, the space around them erupted into battle. But this time, they weren't alone. Ships were emerging from the nebula itself, vessels bearing the insignia of New Terra human fighters that had been hidden throughout the region. Admiral Reeves' voice came over the communication channel. "This is Admiral Sarah Reeves of the New Terra Defense Force. All human ships engage the Kravac fleet. Protect the Harmony Spear at all costs." "You called for backup," Nera asked Daniel. "I sent a signal before we docked. If we found the weapon, if it was real, I knew we'd need help getting it home." The battle was fierce, but brief. The Harmony Spear, wielded by both Nera and Daniel, proved incredibly effective against Kravac technology. Their exoskeleton suits, which had made them nearly invulnerable to conventional weapons, were no match for the combined psychic and technological assault the weapon provided. Even more importantly, the spear seemed to disrupt the Kravac's ability to coordinate effectively, breaking down their hive-like command structure. Within hours, the surviving Kravac ships were retreating into hyperspace, leaving behind debris, and for the first time in anyone's memory, a sense that the galactic domination of the warrior species could be challenged. New Terra appeared before them like a jewel hidden in space. The colony ships that had carried humanity to this secret refuge had evolved into a massive orbital city, its ring structures spinning slowly around a heavily defended core. Gardens and parks were visible through transparent sections, and the whole installation hummed with activity. As the Pathfinder docked, Nera realized her hands were shaking. "Daniel, what happens now?" "Your people have been in hiding for 3,000 years. Mine are gone. Can we really make a stand against the Kravac?" Daniel took her hands, and through their connection to the Harmony Spear, she felt his certainty. "We don't have to stand alone. You said it yourself. The weapon is a symbol of cooperation. Maybe it's time to forge new alliances." Admiral Reeves met them at the docking bay, a stern woman with silver hair and eyes that had seen too much war. Behind her stood a delegation of human leaders, scientists and military officers. Their expressions ranged from hopeful to skeptical. "So," the Admiral said, studying the Harmony Spear still held between them, "this is the ancient weapon our legend spoke of." "More than a weapon," Nera said. "A symbol, and a tool for building alliances." "The Alari girl speaks sense," another officer said. "Our scouts report that word of the Kravac defeat is already spreading. Some species are starting to organize resistance movements." Admiral Reeves nodded slowly. "Then perhaps it's time to step out of the shadows, to reclaim our place in the galaxy." She looked at Nera and Daniel. But we'll need ambassadors. People who understand both the old ways and the new alliances we must forge. Daniel stepped forward. Admiral, I formally request permission to leave New Terra with Nera, to carry word of human survival to the galaxy, and to forge the alliances we'll need to finally defeat the Kravak. Granted, the Admiral turned to Nera. And you, last daughter of the Alari, will you stand with us? Nera felt the weight of her ancestors' memories, through the staff, the approval of generations of peacemakers and alliance builders. But more than that, she felt Daniel's presence beside her, and the strength that came from their connection. I will stand with humanity, she said, and with any species willing to choose cooperation over conquest. Over the following months, as Nera and Daniel traveled the galaxy in the Pathfinder, they discovered that word of the Harmony Spear and the human survival had indeed spread far and wide. Species that had lived under Kravak domination for generations were rising up, forming new alliances, rediscovering ancient bonds of cooperation. The weapon proved its worth not just in battle but as a symbol. When representatives of different species saw humans and Alari working together, wielding a tool that required genuine cooperation to function, it inspired them to set aside old prejudices and rivalries. The war against the Kravak was long and brutal, but for the first time in millennia, the warrior species faced a united front. The Harmony Spear played a crucial role in battle after battle, its psychic technological hybrid nature capable of disrupting Kravak coordination while providing tactical support to allied forces. But perhaps more importantly, Nera and Daniel had become symbols themselves. The last of the Alari and a representative of the thought-extinct human race, standing together against oppression, had captured the imagination of species across the galaxy. In quiet moments, between battles as they traveled from world to world, building alliances and fighting for freedom, Nera and Daniel found their connection deepening. The Harmony Spear had linked their minds, but something more personal was growing between them. Do you think we're doing the right thing? Nera asked one evening as they watched stars wheel past the Pathfinder's viewport. Sometimes, I feel like we're pushing the galaxy toward a war it might not be ready for. Daniel joined her at the viewport, and she felt his thoughts through their bond. The war was already happening. We're just giving people a chance to fight back with hope of winning. The Kravak are still strong, even with all our allies, even with the Harmony Spear. We'll win because we're fighting together. Not as separate species trying to gain advantage over each other, but as genuine allies. He took her hand. That's what the Spear has taught us, isn't it? That our strength comes from unity, not domination. The final battle came sooner than anyone expected. The Kravak, faced with a galaxy increasingly united against them, made one last desperate push. They gathered their remaining fleets and launched a coordinated assault on New Terra itself, hoping to decapitate the growing alliance by destroying the human colony. The Battle of New Terra lasted 3 days and involved ships from dozens of species. The Harmony Spear proved instrumental, not just in combat, but in coordinating the Alliance fleet. Its psychic aspects allowed Nera to communicate instantly with telepathic species, while its technological components interfaced with human tactical networks to share information with non-telepathic allies. When the Kravak flagship, a massive dreadnought that had terrorized the galaxy for centuries, made a final desperate run at New Terra's core, it was Nera and Daniel working together through the Harmony Spear who stopped it. The weapon's combined power overloaded the dreadnought systems, causing it to break apart just kilometers from the colony's outer ring. With their flagship destroyed and their fleet scattered, the remaining Kravak forces retreated to the galactic rim. The age of their dominance was over. In the aftermath of victory, as Alliance representatives gathered on New Terra to celebrate and plan for the future, Nera stood with Daniel on an observation deck overlooking the colony's gardens. The Harmony Spear rested between them, its crystal now glowing with a soft, steady light that seemed to pulse in rhythm with their hearts. So, what now? Daniel asked. The war's over. The Alliance is stable. The galaxy is at peace for the first time in millennia. Nera smiled, feeling the approval of her ancestors through the staff. Now, we live in the galaxy we've helped create, together. Together, Daniel agreed, and through their bond, she felt a question he was too nervous to voice aloud. Yes, she said simply. Their wedding, held in the gardens of New Terra, was attended by representatives from every species in the Alliance. The ceremony blended Alari and human traditions, with vows spoken both aloud and telepathically witnessed by technology and psychic energy alike. The Harmony Spear served as their wedding arch, its light blessing the union that had saved the galaxy. Years later, as they traveled the stars as ambassadors for the new Galactic Alliance, Nera and Daniel would tell the story of how they met, how a sandstorm had driven a desperate Alari warrior into the shelter of the last human, how that meeting had led to the discovery of a weapon that was far more than a weapon. Children from many worlds would gather to hear the tale, their eyes wide with wonder at the idea of a time when different species fought each other instead of working together. And Nera would always end the story the same way. The greatest harmony comes not from being the same, but from choosing to blend our differences into something beautiful. The storms that drive us together are often the beginning of our greatest adventures. And Daniel would add with a smile, sometimes the best shelter isn't from the storm, but in the person standing beside you as you face it together. The Harmony Spear, now displayed in the Museum of Galactic Unity on New Terra, continues to glow with soft light, a reminder that the greatest weapons are those that create peace, rather than destruction, unity, rather than division. And sometimes, late at night when the museum is empty, visitors claim they can hear it singing, a gentle melody that seems to whisper of possibilities, yet to come, of alliances, yet to be forged, of harmony, yet to be achieved among the stars.